Most people believe the secret to getting what they want is painfully simple. Work harder, stay patient, keep your head down, be useful, be disciplined, wait your turn, and if you do those things long enough, life will eventually notice your effort and reward you. That belief has quietly destroyed more ambitions than open failure ever could. The art of asking. They work, they improve, they become dependable, they become skilled, they become the kind of person everyone says should eventually succeed, but they never ask clearly for what they actually want. They want more money, but never define the number. They want more respect, but never define the behavior. They want more freedom, more access, more influence, more opportunity, but they never turn that hunger into a direct signal. Then they stand in front of a silent world and call that silence unfairness. Most people are not rejected by life nearly as often as they imagine. They are ignored by life because they never speak in a language strong enough to force a response. They hint, they hope, they mumble their ambition, they disguise desire as modesty. They tell themselves they are being realistic, when in truth they are being vague. And vague people almost always get vague results. A blurred ask creates a blurred life. The strange part is that asking is still treated like a weak act. People hear the word ask and think of begging, dependency, or childish wishful thinking. But asking is not weakness. Asking is the moment desire stops floating around in your head like fog and turns into direction. It is the moment your mind receives an order. It is the moment a process begins. The instant you ask clearly, something starts moving. Your attention sharpens. Your mind begins scanning the world differently. Patterns you ignored yesterday become relevant today. Doors that looked invisible suddenly become visible. People you would have overlooked now matter. Risks you once avoided begin to look necessary. You do not need to understand every hidden mechanism behind that shift. You only need to understand that it happens. A person can push a button and start a machine without knowing how every gear turns inside it. That is why asking is the beginning of receiving. And that leads to a harder truth. Receiving is often treated like the mystery, when the greater mystery is why so many people never really ask at all. They say they want a different life, yet there is not a scrap of paper in sight describing exactly what that life looks like. They say they are serious, yet their desires remain undefined, unmeasured, and unspoken. Good worker, poor asker. That simple difference quietly separates the people who drift from the people who direct. There is another lie that keeps people weak. They are taught to believe success is scarce. They imagine money, opportunity, recognition, influence, love, and access as if all of it is rationed, as if they arrived late to a window and everything good was already gone. That story feels intelligent because it protects the ego. It is easier to believe the ocean is empty than to admit you walk toward it carrying a teaspoon. That is what most people do. They ask too small. They define too little. They believe too weakly. Their internal container is tiny, so even when life places something in front of them, they do not know how to hold it. Their self-image is too narrow for the scale of what they claim to want. So they approach abundance with the psychology of scarcity and call the result realism. But in a Machiavellian world, asking alone is not enough. You can want intensely and still fail. You can write down a goal and still remain powerless, because the world is not moved by desire alone. It is moved by clarity, incentives, perception, leverage, timing, ego, and hidden motives. That means asking must become more than optimism. It must become strategy, because asking itself is an art. It is a form of negotiation. It is a way of reading human nature, practicing influence, and learning how power actually moves between people. If you do not understand it, you usually fall into one of two childish extremes. You become the shy child who asks for nothing and stays invisible, or the annoying child crying for candy in the supermarket, demanding without awareness, strategy, or self-command. Mature asking is neither silence nor noise. It is disciplined power. It is the ability to understand desire, pressure, ego, timing and leverage well enough to move people without lowering yourself. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly how to ask with more clarity, more control, more influence, and far better odds of getting what you want. That is where this stops being self-help and becomes power. In this video, I am going to show you the laws behind asking in a way the world cannot easily ignore. Not asking like a child waiting to be chosen, but asking like someone who understands human nature, social dynamics, and the invisible mechanics that decide who gets access and who stays outside the gate. Law 1. Know exactly what you want. The first law sounds almost too simple to be powerful, which is exactly why most people ignore it. Know exactly what you want. Not roughly, not emotionally, not in vague language like success, freedom, happiness, or a better life. Those words feel meaningful when you say them, but to the world they mean almost nothing. Human beings do not respond to fog. Reality does not move for blurred signals. Most people say they want more money, but if you press them for a number, they hesitate. They say they want more freedom, but cannot describe what a free day would actually look like. They say they want influence, but cannot explain which room they want to be in, whose attention they want, or what decision they want the power to shape. So their desires remain emotional clouds instead of operational targets, and the world responds accordingly. History gives us a powerful contrast. In 1519, Hernán Cortés arrived on the shores of Mexico with a relatively small force of Spanish soldiers. By any reasonable calculation, the expedition should have failed. The Aztec Empire was vast, wealthy, and militarily powerful. Cortés was outnumbered many times over. Yet within 2 years, the empire collapsed. Many explanations have been offered for this outcome. Alliances with rival tribes, superior weapons, disease, strategy, all of those played a role. But there is a psychological detail often overlooked. Cortés knew exactly what he wanted. He did not arrive vaguely hoping for opportunity. He did not say he wanted some success in the New World. His objective was clear: conquer territory, secure wealth, and build power that would force the Spanish crown to recognize his authority. That clarity changed his behavior from the very beginning. When Cortés landed in Mexico, he famously ordered his ships destroyed. Whether the ships were burned or dismantled, the message was unmistakable. Retreat was no longer an option. The men understood that their leader had defined the mission so clearly that ambiguity had been removed from the equation. Clarity concentrates human energy. Most people never experience that level of clarity in their own lives. They drift between half-formed desires. One week they want stability. The next week they want adventure. One day they want recognition. The next day they convince themselves they prefer anonymity. Their goals change depending on the mood of the moment, the opinions of their friends, or the emotional weather of the week. So the world receives inconsistent signals, and inconsistent signals rarely produce powerful outcomes. There is a psychological mechanism behind this that many people underestimate. The human mind is constantly filtering enormous amounts of information. Every moment there are opportunities, people, conversations, resources, and signals passing by that could potentially matter. But the brain only highlights what it believes is relevant to your goals. If your goals are vague, the filter is weak. If your goals are precise, the filter becomes sharp. Clarity reorganizes perception. This is why intelligent asking begins with precision. Instead of saying you want more money, define the number. Instead of saying you want influence, define the room. Instead of saying you want a better life, describe what an ordinary Tuesday in that life actually looks like. Actually looks like in that life actually looks like. How much? How soon? In what form? With whom? By when? These questions turn desire into coordinates. And once coordinates exist, movement becomes possible. The difference between vague desire and precise desire is the difference between drifting across the ocean and navigating with a compass. One leaves you at the mercy of currents, the other allows you to steer. When you refuse to define your destination, you also refuse the power that comes with direction. So the first law of getting what you want is brutally simple. Know exactly what you want, because the world may ignore vague wishes for decades, but it has a strange tendency to respond when a human being finally speaks with precision. If this idea already changed the way you think about asking, take 1 second and subscribe to the channel. Most people watch silently and move on, but the people who actually change their lives are the ones who turn insight into action. And I want you to leave a comment below as a small ritual before we continue. I ask with clarity, not because the comment itself has magic, but because the moment you write those words, you force your mind to choose a standard. No more vague wishes, no more blurred ambition. From this point forward, you ask with precision. Law 2,